Ever spent time thinking about how folks used to hit the hay before alarm clocks, beds, or even the concept of privacy? Some napped in rotation, others slumbered upright in chairs, and some nodded off in actual coffins. Sounds bizarre? You don't even know what's coming. Today, we're covering some of the strangest sleeping habits in history, where truth can be just as strange as fiction. From segmented sleep to soldiers sleeping with one open eye, no, literally, you're about to be surprised at how different, and more than a little genius, these habits were. Let's get started, and don't forget to hang around until the end of the video. You'd be amazed at the number of the weird sleep behaviors that could explain why you sleep the way you do now. And when it's over, let me know in the comments. How do you feel? Rested? Confused? Ready to journey back to a medieval nap chamber yet? Okay, get your blanket or your wooden pillow, and let's begin with, people have been sleeping for thousands of years, but the way we sleep, that's been a wild, ever-shifting experiment featuring odd rituals, creepy customs, and some just plain insane routines. Stop by segmented sleep, or what historians would have you call first sleep and second sleep. I mean, picture this. It's normal to go to sleep 3 hours after the sun goes down, and then wake up in the middle of the night, not because you had a bad dream, or the oven is still on, because you're ready to start the day. People would rise for an hour or two, writing letters, praying, and, in certain instances, visiting neighbors. Nighttime social calls were a thing. Then they would throw in the towel, crawl back in bed, and enjoy the second sleep. This was prevalent in Europe through the 18th century. Now, if you roll over at 3 a.m. and scroll through Instagram, congrats. You're basically medieval. Then there is the soldier sleep technique. Roman soldiers were taught to doze in 15-minute spurts, standing up. They rested on their spears like humanoid flamingos. Why? So they would be alert and ready at any moment for an attack. Centuries later, this would become polyphasic sleep, where people fragment their sleep with multiple naps during daylight hours. Da Vinci did it. Napoleon allegedly did it. Elon Musk tries to do it. Spoiler, for most humans it's not, unless you're a caffeinated vampire who has no social life. And speaking of strange postures, let us not forget the chair sleepers of the Victorian era. Some during that long ago period suspected that sleeping prone could relax the soul or fill the lungs with fluid. So people, particularly the wealthy and eccentric, would fall asleep in a sitting position in specially designed sleep chairs. Some of those devices even had head braces to keep your neck from snapping like a bobblehead. Toss in a ruffled collar, and you've got a Tim Burton horror nap, but you can't beat the Pharaoh's method, snoozing on stone or wooden pillows sculpted to cradle the neck. I love the way it holds your head as if it were a block of oak that is cradling the neck. It wasn't just to preserve intricate hairdos, it was also thought to be a barrier against evil spirits. Yes, your comfort was secondary to your spiritual safety priorities, am I right? Now let's visit the samurai. These were guys who had to be ready to draw a katana in their sleep, so they trained themselves to sleep day and night, with one eye partially open, a skill honed over years. Samurai slept near their swords, frequently on top of their swords. Think of spooning your gun as if it's a body pillow with trust issues. In the Middle Ages, on the other hand, monks kept what were called canonical hours, requiring them to wake up at intervals in the night to pray. You're in a dream. About angels 1 minute, then chanting Latin in an unheated stone hallway by candlelight. Pretty much the original alarm clock every 90 minutes simulation, only with worse REM and more Gregorian chant. We can't forget the Inuit, who resided in the Arctic, where night might last a matter of weeks. Their sleep was not controlled by the sunlight, but by temperature and survival. They also napped in staggered shifts, took turns watching for polar bears, and adjusted their sleep to fit patterns in hunting. And that's the sort of existence that makes your snooze button seem laughably luxurious. Leaping across the world, we find ourselves in Japan, where inamuri is a cultural phenomenon. It is, quite literally, being awake while sleeping. Inamuri is socially acceptable sleeping, at meetings, on the subway, even at work. But not because you are slack, instead because it's a sign that you are so committed that you are exhausted. In the West, we would call it burnout. In Japan, it has become workplace street cred. In much more recent history, the 20th century brought along sleep aids, sleep studies, mattress mania. But ironically, the more obsessed we became with perfect sleep, the worse we got at it. Primitive humans simply slept when they were sleepy. We, meanwhile, have apps to instruct us when to shut our own eyes, like 3-year-olds who have outgrown a nap. And there's more. Oh, so much more. We have yogis who can exert control over their own heartbeats in their sleep, kings who ordered that no one, not even animals, be allowed to make a sound in their palaces while they napped, and the cave dwellers who used to reckon. Sleep with dripping water. Sleep, even now, has never been one size fits all. It's been a smorgasbord of strange, holy, military, devotional, and downright uncomfortable practices. In brief, sleep isn't just biological. It's historical, cultural, and sometimes insane. For medieval Europeans, and especially for peasants, co-sleeping was more than a choice. Entire families, mum, dad, 6 kids, the dog, maybe a chicken or 2, jammed into one bed, typically straw, and old blankets, and a vague sense of optimism that the lice wouldn't decide to throw a rave that night. Privacy? Not a concept. And this wasn't only about poverty, but cold, drafty homes. Sharing body heat was also a necessity. If it meant sharing a bed with your uncle, so be it. Decent went to the wind in favor of survival, but what about guests? In some cultures, hospitality was quite literally sharing your bed. In the early Icelandic sagas, the stand for half. Your bed was a common object for hosting travelers. No Airbnb, no extra blankets. Hop in, stranger, and don't steal my boots. And already in 17th century France, the wealthy took it all a step further. The bed of state served dual purposes, as though it gave rise to cool implications gracing starched page and Goth's brow-pierced forehead. We would rather put forth that human relations were conducted on it, royal business was managed upon it, or even that public births were undertaken on it. The bed of state was not just for sleep. Yes, having a baby in public, on a velvet canopy bed, practically in front of an audience, was a status move. The king himself would sometimes nap with courtiers close by, tending to him as he snored in regal splendor. Power naps, literal. And now, turn to the ancient Maya civilization, whose understanding of sleep was that it constituted spiritual journeying. Dreams were not bullshit. They were the voices of gods or ancestors. Maya sleepers turned in ready, some with charms and ritual incense at the ready to ease them along their night journeys. This wasn't rest. It was astral diplomacy. Jump back to ancient China and you have a sleeping habit that's cold, literally. Somewhere in there was a preference for cold bedrooms, which some dynasties believed was beneficial for the immune system. They would cover themselves with thick quilts and keep the windows open in the middle of winter. This tradition might have contributed to the evolution of later health beliefs about balance and yin-yang energy, and how sleep was not just rest, but the restoration of spiritual harmony. Never mind how many cultures used guarded sleep as a necessity. In Bedouin clans, desert travelers slept in small shifts, leaving one person on duty to keep an eye on the camp. If you were the one who had to keep watch, sleeping was a matter of taking micro-naps, quick snatches, stolen between stints, usually leaving one ear open for rustling camels or enemies on the horizon. It's as if you had to sleep through, a horror film in which you were the prey. And speaking of danger, Viking raiders built a sleep cycle called the shield wall rest. While camping in the course of raids, they would sleep in close order, in the ranks, along with their shields, bodies half covered by shields and fur, only weapons in their hands. The setup meant that they could go into action within moments. It's a tactical slumber party, but with more axes and fewer buttered kernels. Over in ancient Greece, a few philosophers thought of sleep as a death rehearsal. That's grim until you remember that they believed their dreams to be previews of the afterlife. Heraclitus even slept in caves to become closer to the divine silence. Others sucked down a particularly strong poppy tea, lay down on their floor, and wished they would wake up wiser, or wake up, period. Let's go sideways for a moment, literally, and take a trip to feudal Japan, where nuns laid the groundwork for coffin sleep. They conditioned themselves to lie in wooden boxes, stood upright as if they were dead, and to kill off worldly desires. Some orders there even were that had a refrain for every breath, as it were, keeping always in the mind a kind of half-consciousness. It wasn't relaxation. It was spiritual athletics in the spirit of self-inflicted insomnia. And then there's maybe the weirdest Peter the Great's sleep ban. Yes, Tsar Peter used to punish his noblemen by forbidding them to sleep if they disobeyed. He threw late-night parties that went on for days, and if someone drifted to sleep, they would have wine poured over their head, or worse. Exhaustion was, in his twisted logic, a loyalty test. Sleep was a weakness. Try doing that at your next office meeting and see how long HR survives. And one last nugget for now. In the 1800s, a few doctors thought sleeping too much could drive a person insane or even kill them. There were even actual pamphlets admonishing against more than 6 hours of shut-eye. This was also how rest training was born, whereby people set alarms every 2 hours to ensure they didn't get too much. Picture setting your alarm for 1, 3, and 5 a.m. and hiring somebody to guarantee you do so. Sleep, the very most natural thing a person does, the easiest thing, to boot, has been bent, broken, ritualized, weaponized, spiritualized, politicized, and mystified in God knows how many ways. And it's not even halfway over. So let's start with dream incubation. In ancient Greece, if you faced a big problem, disease, bad luck, a complicated love triangle, you wouldn't only go talk to a therapist, no, you'd attend a sleep temple. These were holy sites of Asclepius, the god of healing. Fast, purify yourself with rituals, perhaps sacrifice a rooster, casual, and then settle down to go to sleep in the temple itself. The goal? To be visited by a god in a dream, to be given a cure or answer. Afterwards, the temple priest would explain your dream and suggest a remedy. So there you were, lying down thinking, maybe God will send some divine Wi-Fi to upload my future? Sleep wasn't passive. It was interactive prophecy. Meanwhile, in tribal Africa, dreams were considered so significant that the day would start with the sharing of dreams throughout the village. You would huddle with your clan and tell each other what you dreamed. Some thought dreams could be shared among individuals, like a psychic group chat, so that one person's nightmare was a warning for all. I wasn't lazy, I just didn't hear the message. Fast forward to Victorian England, and the vibe is very much the opposite. Here, sleep was deeply moralized. Early to bed, early to rise was not only a productivity hack, it was virtually a spiritual commandment. To sleep late was to be weak-willed, indulgent, or, more likely, under opium. It was ironic, since a lot of them were on opium, if they were wealthy enough. Marketed as a sleep aid, it found its way into soothing syrups for babies. That's right, your cranky 1800s baby may have been drugged into dreamland. And speaking of chemically induced sleep, we shouldn't leave the Romans off this list of insane assholes. Wealthy Roman elites slept in absolutely pitch black rooms, but only after they had gorged and sedated themselves. It was almost always wine-doped with mandrake or henbane, both poisonous if taken in the wrong amount. Great, if you made it through the night. If not, oh well, maybe it was time to go. An evening snack and a snack of death. But hey, not everyone was looking to sedate themselves. The Spartans, they taught boys to sleep on reeds, no blankets, in sub-freezing weather. The intent was to make them tough, mentally, physically, spiritually. Then you would be shamed as weak if you objected. Comfort was for cowards and philosophers. The boys who adapted, however, mastered falling asleep under any condition and became the stuff of legend warriors and sleep ninjas. How about jumping continents once more to the indigenous tribes of North America, for whom lucid dreaming wasn't simply a fun trick. It was a necessary skill. Some tribes brought up their children to be aware in their dreams, employing herbs and guided rituals to consciously access the dream world. Once there, you might encounter animal spirits, ancestors, or receive healing visions. For them, sleep wasn't just downtime, it was a second existence. In more recent history, soldiers in World War I and II would take what they called combat naps. Imagine trying to get to sleep in a trench, the ground full of mud, rats, explosions, and trauma. Soldiers would sleep for 5-15 minutes at a time amid bullet spray. Some even practiced sleeping while standing with their rifles slung over their bodies, like human coat racks. People were so overwrought that hallucinations were routine. One British soldier said that after 72 hours of battle with no sleep, he saw dancing penguins on the French countryside. And he wasn't even the weirdest one. There is also Thomas Edison, who loathed sleep. He dismissed it as a criminal waste of time and attempted to confine himself to 20-minute naps at intervals during the day. He even had beds in his labs for emergency dozing. It's also, ironically, the guy who invented the light bulb, that wonder of modern civilization that simultaneously destroyed humanity's hitherto natural sleep cycle. The man who despised sleep accidentally gave the world insomnia. Actually, let's discuss sleepwalking as well. Or, more precisely, ritualized sleep movement. Sleepwalkers in some European villages weren't viewed as sick. They were regarded to be spiritually touched, communicating divine forces. In certain communities, they were even followed, some believing they'd lead to hidden treasure or spiritual insight. Imagine your midnight kitchen raid being accompanied by 10 candle-holding villagers, all in total silence. Creepy? Yeah, but at that time, it was, like, almost hopeful. Now let's go to the Arctic Circle again, because nothing's going to ruin your perception of sleep like 24 hours of darkness or 24 hours of daylight. Those who lived in areas such as northern Scandinavia and Siberia often developed a seasonal way of sleeping, getting into the habit of sleeping for long periods of time during the polar night, and remaining awake for more than 20 hours during the polar day. Their sleep wasn't timed, but rhythmic, not bound by time so much as by need. Naps became the default. Full night sleeps were rare. And internal clocks, more like gambling with yourself. And if you believe that capitalism does not, literally, interfere with sleep, think again. During the Industrial Revolution, plants ran sun-up to sundown systems, and sleep was something that had to fit into your shift. If your job was at night, tough. You learned to sleep with daylight barreling past your window and coal trains shaking your walls. For others, it felt so unnatural that they put themselves to sleep by holding a chloroform-soaked rag to their noses. Dangerous? Yep. But it beat moving or getting a job that honoured circadian rhythms. One more. In rural 1800s America, there was a brief superstition that dreams could be caught. If you had a bad dream, you were to sleep in a different room the next night so you wouldn't infect the dreams of your family. Dream quarantine, basically. And, yes, people took it seriously too. The next day, some would burn herbs in the bedroom to clear the bad sleep energy. Before we continue, let's discuss sleep crimes. No, not taking someone's blanket. I mean real crimes that have been committed in a state of sleepwalking. In medieval courts, those to blame were often acquitted of having committed violent acts in their sleep if they could prove that true nocturnal possession was to blame for their actions. In 1313, one man stabbed his cousin during a night terror and got off because he had long history of violent dreams. The belief? He was being temporarily demon-possessed in his sleep. So you weren't a murderer? You were just a meat puppet for demons. Convenient. Now, for the point I'd like to make about the ancient Romans again, as they were a people who liked extremes. There was an elite craze for the so-called salt sleep. Rich people in Rome thought if they slept in beds filled with salt crystals, as in actual salt, the crystals could draw out bad juju, keep them looking young, and improve dreams. The bed was to be a hollow stone vat filled with rough sea salt, covered with thin linens or goat hair blankets. Bonus, it was getting rid of dead skin cells while you slept. Downside, sleeping in salt is like seasoning yourself. Leaping back to the Middle Ages, let's get into fear-based sleep. It was once widely believed that witches and demons assaulted people while they slept, particularly if they slept on their back. This accounted for the idea of sleep paralysis demons, originating hundreds of years before Rematonia was describing by science. They slept in iron cages or wore garlic amulets to bed, or stuffed knives below their pillows, handles facing away for reasons. The legendary sex demons known as the incubus and succubus, believed to assault unsuspecting sleepers, took the blame for undesired arousal or nightmarish dreams. It was just hormone spikes and anxiety, if the truth be known. But it was easier to blame horny ghosts back then. Now let's take a trip underground, as in subterranean. During the Cold War era of nuclear anxiety, families constructed fallout bunkers that served as sleeping quarters. These were deep, concrete-lined rooms, typically with no ventilation or natural light. There was shift work of a different kind. Sleep. In rotating bunker beds, punctuated by rations, gas masks and radios. Try relaxing in a cement coffin with canned beans as company. A few even came with simulation lights that could imitate the rising and setting of the sun. You've never had an unnatural sleep until you've snoozed in an apocalypse pod rated for governments. But without the heat of battle, some cultures deliberately slept in darkness so profound it came close to sensory deprivation. Some Native American tribes, such as the Hopi, thought dreams came through most clearly in total blackness. So they would cut off all light, even moonlight, by sleeping in windowless caves or enclosed huts, sometimes blindfolded. These were not naps. They were all-out spiritual expeditions. Now swing over to Russia in the 18th century, where peasants frequently dwelled in single-room homes with indoor ovens. Here's the freaky thing. During the winter, whole families would sleep on the oven, on top of it. The brick stoves, pechka, were toasty, flat-topped, and big enough to hold a few people. Kids, elders, pets, everyone got on there, forming what was essentially a communal human lasagna of body heat and soot. Meanwhile, the room filled with the smoke of cooking, and no one had thought to crack a window because, Siberia. Cozy? Sure. Healthy? Not remotely. Meanwhile, in ancient Persia, royal personages had a finely delineated sleep rule. Never sleep with the head to the north. Why? As it was thought, north till death. Astrologers and court mystics arranged beds with great precision, so no one's death direction was triggered. If you dared to arrange your head northward on your pillow while sleeping, you were essentially tempting fate, or at best gambling with very bad dreams. Some even employed sleep priests to protect their rest, whispering protection, prayers while they snoozed. You're not overthinking your sleep hygiene. They had someone chanting it into being. Then there is the curious case of sleep fasting in devotional communities throughout India and Tibet. Monks were even trained to resist sleep for days for the purpose of achieving deeper meditative states. Some could remain cross-legged for more than 72 hours, falling into a trance-like state known as rhyme as they do so. While technically they are sleeping, they are also utterly still. There are accounts of monks who could slow their heart rate and their breathing so dramatically they seemed dead. In one monastery, this skill was referred to as turning to stone. That's correct. The objective was to sleep so hard that you appeared to be furniture. Not to be outdone, Australian Aboriginal tribes regarded dreams as belonging to the dream time, the sacred domain. Sleep was a link to the time of creation. Who was in charge of interpreting those dreams and then helping people figure out ways to change their destiny? Some sleep and dream rituals were conducted at special sites, such as rock pools, waterholes, or other places of power at ancient, iconic galleries. These weren't just nap spots, they were hallowed GPS coordinates of the soul. And then we come to the insomnia cults of 19th century America. There was one faction, dubbed the Wakefuls, who saw sleep as a waste of time and a weakness. They conditioned them to stay awake for a week at a time, through cold baths, fierce self-discipline, and a diet of vinegar and raw onion. Yes, onions. Some even attempted sleep deprivation to conjure up visions or to open portals to other worlds. Unsurprisingly, many of them ended up dead, broke, or accidentally setting fires because they passed out next to candles. Whoops. In Victorian asylums, it was standard to use sleep deprivation as a punishment for patients. One remedy included having patients woken up every hour so that mental stagnation does not develop. Others were placed in sleep lockers, small boxes with only enough space to curl up, where they had to sleep silently and alone. These were believed to be of therapeutic value. We would call it psychological warfare today. First to mind, of course, is the Chinese emperors who could have several sleeping chambers in various palaces, but not for comfort, for safety. Neither did anyone know where the emperor took his nap that night, not even his concubines. Guards were sworn to secrecy. The reason? Coup attempts directed at undermining your authority. Sleep was such an exposure, emperors accorded it the status of military strategy. You sleep, you die, unless no one knows where your bed is. Genius, in a terrifying way. One last one for this round. The Zulu warriors of South Africa believed in something known as hunting sleep. They'd remain awake over 2 days before embarking on a long campaign or a hunt to reach a level where your aggression and awareness is extremely stoked. Then, following the mission, they would crash, frequently sleeping for 24 hours. Under guard, their bodies were conditioned to spike and crash like human battery packs. Naps were war prep. Blood was the price of sleep. First, V, royal sleep surveillance. Let's begin with the royal sleep. Ever since Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, slipped free from the clan, there has been non-stop poring over every single aspect of the way that they are conducting themselves. In most ancient substances of power, particularly in France, China, and the Ottoman Empire, the sleep was not private. Monarchs and emperors were believed to be divine or semi-divine, and as such their sleep was watched for messages from the gods. Court physicians, dream interpreters, and even astrologers were inside or close by the bedchamber, at times noting if the ruler was taking a snooze and in which positions they slept, what they mumbled, or if they twitched during dreams. In Versailles, Louis XIV's going to bed was a massive event known as the coucher ceremony. The nobility vied for the honor of presenting him with his nightshirt or puffing his pillows. Guards, meanwhile, waited outside to see that no one tried to assassinate the Sun King while he snoozed. Sleep wasn't just rest, it was ritualized, PR. Even to dream became political business. But just as kings were making bedtime into Broadway, others considered it a mystic exit. In a broad slice of Polynesian society, your spirit went to the spirit world every night. This isn't hyperbole. They really did mean this literally. That's why those sudden awakenings were terrifying. If your soul didn't make it back in time, you would wake up empty, and something, illness, evil, confusion, would take its place. Then they could make the soul time to re-enter by singing gently or drumming slowly. You're practically putting in a passenger boarding call for your astral body. At some places in medieval Europe, the deathbed was regarded as final sleep, transactional and scripted like a stage finale. You were supposed to forgive everyone, get forgiven, and then fall asleep in the Lord. And this is how we came to the term eternal rest. Families would even wrap the dying in special sleep robes and furnish the bedroom as if a holy sanctuary. Rich people had death-sleep stylists to groom them and pose them pretty in bed in case they never awoke. Death wasn't something scary. It was a well-staged sleeping event. Let's go darker. Among isolated Balkan villages, there was a notion that some men were sleep haunters. These were not ghosts. They were living people who had the involuntary power to visit others in their dreams and suck energy from them. Imagine Inception, but without the CGI. If someone in the village suffered chronic fatigue or was beset by bad dreams, the fault often lay with a neighbor who was none the wiser. Sleep vampires, some of whom were literally cursed of sleeping, were required in some cases to sleep in seclusion or to wear necklaces of garlic or have symbols of protection carved above their doorways. Sleep was unsafe, not when your neighbor was a suspected dream thief. By contrast, in early Islamic mysticism, sleep was viewed as a temporary forerunner of death. The Prophet Muhammad, we are told, once said, "Sleep is the brother of death." Consequently, many early Sufis had practiced sleep as surrender, lying down only after having undergone a ritual washing and recited appropriate verses of the Quran and turned the body toward Mecca. Some masters even trained themselves to dream of the Prophet by forcing themselves to recite his name before sleep. When they made a go of it, it was a big spiritual milestone, not a dream, but a visit. On the other side of the spectrum entirely, early America prescribed bed rest for everything from hysteria to a broken heart. But it became an all-consuming cultural fixation on fainting couches, rest cures, and months of sleep-filled retreats taken by wealthy women. Some were locked in rooms for weeks and prevented from moving, reading, or engaging in anything interesting. The notion was that pure sleep would reboot the brain. It did the opposite. A large number of women cracked mentally, and some, including Thomas's countrywoman, author Charlotte Perkins Gilman, later wrote horror stories about it. See the yellow wallpaper in her life. Sleep didn't bring healing. It was a velvet prison. Let's head to the Amazon, where some tribes deem dreams to be as real as waking life, and therefore need to be balanced by equally real waking rituals. If you see yourself fighting someone in a dream, you should give that person a gift the following morning. If you dream about cheating on your spouse, you tell them. Why? Because the world of dreams and the waking world are considered to be the same. They are both aspects of your lived life. Sleep is not escape. It's accountability in an alternate universe. And then came the Victorian paranormal boom, when seances and spiritualism all the rage. People thought you could use your dreams to contact the dead. Some would even stage dream seances with groups sleeping in the same room and the intention of connecting with a joint spirit. They'd sync up sleep patterns, record any overlap in dreams, and compare notes in the morning. Some even employed early sound machines, crank-operated noise appliances, to change brain states. Essentially haunted sleepovers where your night terrors can land you a best-selling ghost memoir. And then there's shared sleep and the effect it has on the brain among couples who sleep closely in Japan's Kawa-no-ji sleeping formation, the river character, sleep. In more traditional families, the kanji character for river, Chuan, was reenacted in sleep, a child in the middle, parents on each flank. It did more than serve a purpose. It had symbolic meaning of protection, of unity, of flow. If the child ventured too far left or right, a parent's body would slide to prevent them from tumbling off the futon. Literal sleep geometry. We'll do one more before concluding Part 5, Dream Fasting at Ethiopian Monasteries. The monks who lived here thought that too many dreams could clutter the soul, so they would go into periods of sleep discipline. Aitukanst restricting themselves to 3 or 4 hours of sleep per night, always sleeping sitting up, and meditating before, during, and after any sleep period. The aim was not only to cut down on dreams, but also to filter them, only decreasing those that were holy. What if you had a secular or sexual dream? It was seen as spiritual pollution, and you had to say purification prayers. Sleep wasn't indulgence, it was a delicate spiritual tool like a scalpel. Let's start with sleep as protest. And sleep, or the rejection of sleep, has at times been a weapon of choice for activists during key civil rights moment of the 20th century. In US detention facilities, those on hunger strikes would also withhold sleep, arming themselves with the knowledge that authorities would have to respond more quickly to sleep deprivation. In South Africa, anti-apartheid activists were said to keep wake vigils for such purposes, staying up for days on end as a symbol of injustice that never rests. The message was clear: we'll be out there until you fix this, literally. Then there's the 1980s nap church, which, yes, was indeed a thing. Conceived in San Francisco by a band of radical artists and former insomniacs, it was part parody, part protest, and part sincere wellness movement. Devotees of this church held that the greatest sin of modern life was a lack of sleep. They staged weekly public naps in shopping malls and at train stations, in robes with candles and incense, and recording lullaby sermons. Members exchanged sleep blessings and called REM cycles divine rotations. The church at its height had more than 4,000 members and even released a holy book, the Mattress Gospel. Now how about sleep inventions? Because if it might help you get better sleep, people will patent it. One of the wackiest, the sleep helmet, TM. A cushioned dome that fits over your head like a medieval helmet, intended to mask sound, light, and touch. Designed in the 90s, it resembled a cross between a space helmet and a microwave. After Long-term use, users reported dream hallucinations. Market success, 0. Cult legend status, absolute. Another one? The nap tent for offices. It's a sort of sleeping bag that rolls out on top of your desk. Designed in Japan, it falls over your upper body in a cocoon so you can nap in total darkness while pretending you handed out read spreadsheets. It was sold to salarymen who were supposed to work 16 hours a day. The instruction manual was like this: enter tent, surrender ego, sleep with honor. In the meantime, scientists were racing to out-nap the astronauts. NASA has been doing wild sleep experiments since the 60s, but one of the strangest involved underwater, sleep tests. They hope to replicate the impacts of microgravity on REM cycles. Subjects slept for weeks in pressure-filled underwater pods. Some had aqualucid dreams, dreams in which they knew they were underwater and used that knowledge to explore dream oceans. One test subject even composed a brief sci-fi novel while in a semi-dream state. NASA shelved it. We call that an opportunity missed. On land, polyphasic sleep experiments had a cult following in the 2000s. The idea, out with the 8-hour block. Instead, take 6 to 8 naps throughout the day, each one lasting 20 minutes. Advocates promised that it unlocked genius mode and provided additional waking hours for creativity, coding, or whatever. Notable followers, purportedly, Da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, and Buckminster Fuller. Modern reality, most people simply got muddled, jumpy, and permanently pissed off. Longest anyone could maintain a Uberman schedule without going completely fucking mental? About 6 months. They slept for 18 hours and never spoke of it again. Let's take a sidestep into sleep architecture therapy. This is a real and totally bonkers thing, in case you were wondering, where therapists analyze not only your dreams but the furniture in your dreams. You dream of a couch, that's your comfort zone. A broken bed, emotional instability. A bed on an elevator, suspended in space? You are cosmic in ambition but terrified of intimacy. The therapy would be a session in which you'd kind of reconstruct your dream world in the form of living. That is, with the furniture of IKEA and the lava lamps. Expensive? Yes. Effective? Who knows? Weirdly popular in LA? Absolutely. Protest now. See, once again. In 2011, the Occupy Wall Street movement spawned a micro-trend called protest sleeping. Protesters would camp out in purposefully chosen public spaces, taking over parks, banks, sidewalks in the name of peaceful resistance. The police did not always know how to respond. Are they breaking the law or just, very, very tired? In some cities, activists would take shifts. One group would march while the other rested or napped on yoga mats. Sleep grew into a statement. We're not leaving, we're just striking here until further notice. On the wellness side, Silicon Valley did what it does best: turn basic human needs into products. The era of the sleep tech bro has dawned. Just consider the $5,000 sound pods, the Bluetooth pajamas that monitor your sweat levels, the weighted blankets infused with copper ions to rebalance your aura. Some CEOs have begun doing strategic REM sessions, coupled with caffeine microdosing before and after naps. One even installed an egg-shaped nap chamber that plays nothing but whale noises and Tibetan gongs. It's all very peaceful and very expensive and very stupid. But not everything is a joke. Consider the zero-stimulus sleep pods designed in Finland. They're pure black, thermally controlled capsules that are free from light, sound, and clocks. You join for voluntary isolation sleep to reboot the nervous system. Some patients have said it gave them the deepest rest of their lives. Others say it felt like death. Reviews are mixed. The company motto, "Wake up someone new." Oh, and we can't forget about the sleep art movement. Artists strap on EEG sensors and allow the brain waves that they emit while sleeping to direct paintbrushes, lasers, or 3D printers. Some installations are live-streamed so you can watch an artist sleep for 8 hours and their dreams get transformed into digital lava lamps on the wall. Is it beautiful? Kind of. Is it boring? Also, yes. But one can wonder, is sleep the last frontier of creativity? And finally, sleep concerts. Yes, that's a thing. You pay for a ticket to a massive hall full of mattresses. Ambient musicians perform continuous drone music, Tibetan singing bowls, whale sounds, and the odd synth wave. No applause, no lights, only 8 hours of chaperoned snoozing in a roomful of strangers. The goal is to provide urban hounds with a shared, sacred sleep. Some say they go back refreshed. Others say they emerge questioning why they paid $120 to take a nap next to a stranger who snored like a leaf blower. But hey, that's the new spirituality for you. Let's begin with Hypnos, the Greek god of sleep. He was more than a friendly presence at bedtime. He was a god of divine power, with wings that grew from his temples, capable of knocking out gods and mortals alike. He resided in a cave of never-ending night by the river Lethe, to which no light, sound, or cock's crow ever penetrated. His bed, with clothing made of black ebony and adorned with poppies. Hypnos was so powerful that he could even put the god Zeus, who was the lord of the other gods, to sleep. You heard right. Sleep was more powerful than lightning, and Hypnos's twin brother, Thanatos, god of death, that's mythology speaking. Sleep and death are blood siblings. Things are even chillier in Norse mythology. 37. The goddess Not, who rides a black horse through the sky, bringing sleep to the world. Her son is Darga, day, who drives this chariot across the sky. The sleep here isn't just at night, it's an otherworldly cycle of chase. But wait, it gets weirder. The All-Father Odin was known to lapse into magic trances, leaving his body like a statue for days, while his spirit roamed the 9 worlds. Viking berserkers thought sleep was for the weak and lazy, so some trained to forget about it for days, hallucinating their way into what they called battle sleep. A trance in which pain didn't matter and death felt like dreaming. Cutting to Hindu mythology, and we encounter Nidra, the goddess of sleep. She's not just a goddess. She's a power that can put entire universes to sleep. And so it was that when Vishnu, the preserver god, wanted to change the world, he first called on Nidra to hypnotize every part of the creation to sleep. Then, and only then, could cosmic rebirth occur. That's correct. Sleep was required to reboot reality itself. Vishnu himself is frequently represented asleep on a cosmic serpent drifting on a milk sea. The universe kinda just takes a little snooze while he's sleeping, a god asleep, with whom existence is permissible. Top that, melatonin. Now over to Egyptian lore. The god Osiris is best known for having been murdered by his brother Set and being dismembered. But when his wife Isis reassembled him, he didn't quite come back to life. He came back to a brilliant slumber in the underworld, where he reigns as a judge of souls. According to Egyptian myth, sleep was an entry into the realm of Duat, the afterlife. Egyptians who slept near tombs to share a messenger's bed with the dead had the idea that dreams were nothing less than real, true messages from the buried. Dreaming was more than symbolic. It was necromancy light. In Mesopotamia, there's the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which the hero searches for eternal life. One of his tests: keep awake for 6 days and 7 nights. He fails almost instantly. The test was not one of strength, but it was about demonstrating mastery over the divine boundary of sleep. It is not for humans to cross it for long. When he awakens, loaves of bread that had been put by him have become wormy. That's myth's way of telling us even the mightiest figures among us have to be put to sleep, or else we'll sweat and rot everything around us. Next, we fly east to Japan, where sleep and spirits have always lain on the same futon. The Baku is an oblique-backed Japanese chimera with the starling body of a bear, the nose of an elephant, and the paws of a tiger. Ridiculous sounding until you find out what it does: eats nightmares. Kids are trained to call for the Baku. If they wake up after a nightmare, "Baku-san, come eat my dream." But here's the catch. If the Baku is still hungry after feasting on the nightmare, it'll start gnawing on your hopes and dreams as well. It's dream insurance, and the fine print is very aggressive. In Slavic folklore, the Upir, who foreshadowed the modern vampire, wasn't simply bloodthirsty. Then it might creep into dreams, creating sickness or madness, but people would sleep with iron stakes or thorns under their pillows for the protection of the mind. If you ever woke up with a bruise and no recollection of how, it was a sign the Upir had visited. This is basically fangs with sleep paralysis. Let's talk sleep curses. The most famous, Sleeping Beauty. But in the original tales, the ones where Disney cleaned it up, she isn't kissed awake at all. In other versions, she sleeps for 100 years, becomes pregnant while asleep, and wakes up when the baby arrives. It's dark, it's grim, it speaks to a cultural phobia, losing control of one's body under unconsciousness. In my and other mythologies, cursed sleep is stasis, punishment, or spiritual exile. In Filipino folklore, the Bangungot is a night terror, a real cultural syndrome, in which people, often young men, die in their sleep. Folklore blames a vengeful ghost or demon who is sitting on your chest. However you call it, in medical terms, it's sudden, unexpected nocturnal death syndrome, CUNDS. But the myth has it as a dream so strong that your soul forgets to come back. In Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime, there's a tale of the rainbow serpent, an entity that sleeps under the ground. When it moves, it transforms rivers, weather, and life. Sleep isn't a state of unconsciousness. It's an absence of active God energy. The universe hangs in a fragile silence, a heartbeat, as dreams awaken creation. The land, its inhabitants, and their forebears connect through persistent dreaming stories, transferred that spiritual DNA. Want more eerie? In Celtic myth, fairy rings, those small circles of mushrooms you see in woods, are thought to be sites where time gets bent out of shape. Sleep inside one, and you may wake up 300 years later, completely unchanged, while the world has spun on around you. In some Irish stories, the lovers fall asleep under a tree and wake up to find their village vanished, their names lost, their language outworn. A nap that has disastrous time travel ramifications. Among some West African traditions, sleep is when one's real self emerges. They think all people have several spirits. An awake one, a sleeping one, an ancestral one. While you sleep, these spirits meet. If they come to a decision, you wake up in peace. If they argue, you wake exhausted or sick. To solve this, some tribes conduct dream councils where the community assists in interpreting disagreements among your inner spirits. Therapy, but myth-powered, and we can't discount the Bible. Dreams and divine sleep are all over the place. It is Joseph who saves Egypt on account of Pharaoh's dreams. Daniel interprets night visions to forecast changes of political fortune. Joseph the carpenter, by the way, not the Technicolor one. And in the New Testament, Joseph gets instructions from an angel only in dreams. God doesn't appear on coffee break. He appears when you least expect him. The lower spirit guides frequently visit an individual in their dreams and effectively chose them within Haitian Vodou. If you keep dreaming about a certain lower, that means they claimed you. Deny their call and your sleep will be tantamount to torture, full of fire, drowning, or unending plunges. It can also entail vivid dreams, clarity, and even, sometimes, prophetic visions while awake. The moment initiates have described feeling to be peace at last. Let's start with one of the most consistent and pervasive taboos across cultures. Never sleep facing a mirror. Why? Because for many traditions, mirrors are passages, reflective gateways between the world of the living and the spiritual. Sleeping in front of one, that's like leaving your spiritual front door wide open and unlocked with a big neon sign that says, "Free soul inside, take one." According to Chinese feng shui, mirrors across from the bed are bad luck. They mirror your soul, bounce your energy, and in some traditions may swipe a piece of your essence while you are in dreamland. It's part of why old hotels in Asia will sometimes cover mirrors at night or place them behind wardrobes. Their clothes suppress spirits because they don't want guests to get possessed. Escalate the intensity even further. Dream warfare. In others, like tribes in Papua New Guinea, dreams are not only personal, they are battlegrounds. Shamans said they could attack the dream of an enemy, sapping them of their strength before a physical skirmish commenced. Call it a psychic ambush. If someone in your village fell ill or became anxious for no reason, the elders might insist that the dream had been infiltrated. The response? A counter-dreaming and drumming ritual with herbs or dream-enhancing drugs which, in preparation for a spiritual counterattack. Yes, literal dream duels, no fireballs, just mind combat in REM mode. Now let's discuss sleeper soldiers. Not only in ancient Sparta, but even with elite samurai, warriors are trained to wake up at the same time every night, no matter the season or what the situation was. It wasn't magical, it was necessity. If you could drop into a run or battle at 3 a.m. with no problems, you were a powerful asset when word came for an ambush. They would condition it through discipline, punishment lines, and bed boarding, in which they went to sleep strapped to a board, meal timing, exposure to cold, and even triggers for pain, like tying a hair to a candle so that it burned through and dropped on the skin at a palace-appointed hour. Imagine an internal alarm clock so neat it might even edge out your Apple Watch. On the other side of hyper-discipline, some civilizations dreaded premature waking. In some conservative rural regions of Italy, local law cautions against rousing anyone too suddenly, particularly children or the elderly. The soul also passes out of the bodily cavity when we sleep, they thought, and disappears into the air, then comes back and rushes into the body at the end of sleep, just as we were about to wake up. Get someone back on their feet too soon, and that soul could get lost when it's on its way back, leaving the person befuddled, sick, or open to possession. That's why many elders were awoken with incense, soft tapping, or a whispered name, your 7 a.m. foghorn of an alarm clock. In this world, that's a soul trap. Now let's get to cultural insomnia epidemics. In the early 2000s, Cambodia experienced an enigmatic cluster of cases of severe fear of sleep among young men, particularly war refugees. Many of them were survivors of the Khmer Rouge genocide. They thought they would be murdered in i.e. their sleep, if they dozed off. Some simply dropped dead, victims of a fatal insomnia, which for them the fear itself induced. It was so famous it influenced Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, not as fiction. Not as a cultural echo of real death by terrorized sleep. Yes, there is. In South Korea, the myth of fan death persists. The idea that going to bed with the fan on in a sealed room will kill you in your sleep. Explanations include asphyxiation as well as something called cold-induced respiratory failure. It's been scientifically debunked, but belief runs strong enough that many of the fans sold in Korea come with an auto timer to shut them off after a few hours, just in case. That's how paranoid deep sleep can get. It rewrites product design. Here's a dilly of one. In a few locations in Indonesia, people sleepwalk in a pattern known as tidur jalan, which translates to walking sleep. Others are convinced that these midnight peregrinations are communications from ancestral spirits indicating paths of navigation, alerts of danger or previous hiding places of a treasure. Families that witness it may trail the sleeper from afar, jotting down any steps or phrases muttered in half-sleep, and consult a local seer to interpret. Sleepwalking isn't a disorder, it's an occurrence. Dangerous, enigmatic, and, at times, profit-making. Now let's consider Spain's nap mafia. Actually not a mafia, but the word used to describe a group of 1980s Spaniards, researchers and public health advocates who attempted to make siestas compulsory as a national policy. They claimed that post-lunch naps made people smarter, decreased crime, and enhanced romantic relationships. Some even suggested offices included siesta bunkers in corporate structures. The idea just about made it into national health legislation, but was jettisoned at the Treasury's insistence because capitalism despises horizontal people. In Tibet, there are monks who think lucid dreaming is a technique one can employ in death. If you become skilled at controlling your dreams, you can also control your transition in the bardo, the state in between death and rebirth. Training comprises of sleep yoga, during which monks sleep in a seated lotus position, wake after every dream cycle, write down their dream, meditate upon it, then return to sleep. The end goal, instead of freaking out when you die, you say, I've been here before, and steer yourself to a better reincarnation. Dreaming your way, in the truest sense of the word, to better karma. One more nutty one, that sleeping outside in ancient Mongolia could erase your name. It was believed that open-air sleep, especially in certain lunar cycles, could cut you off from your ancestral lineage. Your dreams might go unrecorded, like a traveller with no passport. That's why nomads always slept beside symbolic anchors, carved stones, hearth fires, family relics, not for comfort, for identity tethering. Because on the Mongolian steppe, if your name slipped away in a dream, maybe you can't get it back. Let's begin by taking a look at the latest frontier, neuroscience-driven lucid dreaming aids. Today there are wearables that literally buzz, flash, or shoot microsignals at you while you're in REM, reminding you that you're dreaming. The idea? Transform your dreams into a computer game and play it too, with yourself as the main character and level designer. You can also purchase headbands that tickle, via soft electric pulse, your prefrontal cortex, the area that governs awareness as you slumber, a sort of digital come hither telling your noggin, hey, not awake yet, but on some level you could be. But that's baby steps. Let's talk dream recording. In Japan, there are already primitive systems that analyze brain activity with fMRI and artificial intelligence to reconstruct dream images. Early efforts are slime baggy, like putrid watercolor blobs that might sort of resemble what someone was dreaming, but it's real. We're almost watching our own dreams as Netflix mats. Sleep and wake to yourself. Broadcasting your dream in 4K romantic, maybe. Disturbing? Definitely. Marketable? Oh, absolutely. Just until dreams are embedded with advertising, then there's AI-fueled sleep management, already a thing. Sleep tech companies employ machine learning to watch your heart rate, brain waves, movement, room temperature, air quality, and even mood to coach you into optimized sleep states. Some use these systems to adjust your mattress firmness, pillow angle, and ambient noise in real time. Some connect to your smart home and either dim your lights, lock your doors, and play your most effective frequencies for you automatically. Sleep used to be rest. It's a curated, algorithmic experience now. Next stop, space sleep. How humans sleep in zero gravity, especially around long-term missions, is a fixation of NASA, as well as its European and Russian counterparts, the ESA and Roscosmos. As it happens, when you float, your body has a hard time calibrating sleep in the customary way. Astronauts must tuck themselves into sleeping bags mounted on the walls or ceilings because down is a fiction. Strap blacked-out visors to their heads and fight the continual roar of life support systems. For some, there is space insomnia, a combination of physical disorientation and mental hyper-alertness. Now consider a mission to Mars, 6 to 9 months in a space can. Investigators are already experimenting with induced hibernation, reducing metabolism, temperature and brain activity in order to allow astronauts to nap through the void. We mean cryolite hibernation pods. You drop off to sleep on Earth and, with luck, you wake up on another planet. What could possibly go wrong? But sleep in the future isn't necessarily going to be all about optimization. It'll be about escape. The fact is, we sleep as much or more than we want to, except those tribesmen who are sharing our brains are really lousy house guests and wake us up constantly to practice the bagpipe and put their cold feet on us, Mr. Davies wrote last week and subsequently revised on his blog. Consider, you live in a poisoned megacity, labor 16-hour days, and your only respite is plugging into a dream that feels more real, more tranquil, somehow more you. Some researchers already forecast the advent of dream dens, pods you rent, and experience synthetic lucid dreams, pre-programmed for relaxation, fantasy, or health. A beach vacation, a childhood memory, talking with a departed relative. Yes, just swipe right on your dream. We also have dream doping to look forward to. This is not melatonin and chamomile. It's a sandwich board neurochemical cocktail tailored for particular flavors of dream content to amp up creativity or problem solving, tamp down trauma response, or bring on euphoria. Big tech, plus big pharma, plus big sleep. Designer dreams. You will no longer simply ask, "Did I sleep well?" You will be asking, "What did I download last night?" And what about gene editing? Some, of course, are born with a mutation to the DEC2 gene. They already need only 4. These people claim they are fully rested, high-functioning and sharp. Super sleepers. Now scientists are looking to see if they can do so themselves through CRISPR technology or biohacking. The goal? Get rid those of pesky 8 hours of sleeps. Why spend a third of your life asleep when you can simply do machine mode 24/7? But then there's this wrinkle. A few futurists have sounded a warning that sleep is not only a biological anachronism, it's a sanity screen. Without regular unconscious rest, the human brain's circuits would become jammed with junk. Emotional processing, memory filtration, trauma defragging, it all takes place in sleep. Delete that and basically you are driving a car with no brakes, No oil changes and no map. Sure, you're going fast, but you're going to explode. And then there's the social gap, in a tomorrow in which sleep is something that can be customized and bought on the open market. Designer dreams, AI pods, neural boosters. Who would get it? Will there come a day when dreams are in IMAX for the rich but the poor sleep on concrete? Rest inequality. Dream capitalism. Nightmares for rent. Let's take it a step further. What happens when you dream the same dream as other people? In fact, scientists are already tinkering with shared dreams via brain-computer interfaces, BCIs. Think sleep multiplayer. A collective lucid dream space in which people can work together, build, converse, explore, all while sleeping in separate rooms, countries, continents, and it sounds like Inception. Because that's what we're building. We may soon have worldwide dream networks. Your dreams can now be shared with others. One last idea. Sleep as time machine. Not literally, in the figurative, in for a penny mode. As we live longer lives, we could always return to an AN belief that sleep squishes time. The poor may sleep more to avoid feeling hunger. People who are sick, for example, sleep more to avoid the pain. Spacefarers may sleep more to span light years. The rich could prefer to sleep in luxury, virtual worlds, as their businesses are managed by automated systems. The future may not be one of defeating sleep as much as it is redefining it as a final bastion of that most human of all characteristics, consciousness, where dreams are safe, where identity can float, where time bends and the mind can roam free. Off the wire grid, off the line, off planet. We stand on the brink of transforming sleep into a technology, a transaction, a therapy, a tool, a drug, a weapon, and perhaps the last remaining conduit to something that looks to us like the truth. Poke me when you're ready for part 10, the big finale, when we'll bring it all together and pose the question, what does this all say about us? Why is sleep the weirdest and most sacred and invincible ritual we follow? Let's end this odyssey the way it started, in the dark, with strange dreams and open eyes. Sleep has never been mere rest. It's been confession, rebellion, science experiment, holy sacrament, touchstone, family bonding, public theatre, research audit, locus of high anxiety, culpability, contrition and mystique, a politically problematic, instigator of sociality and preserver of culture, and soother of pain. It's the one thing we humans all do across time, status, belief, and biology, yet no one has ever completely mastered it. We've made sleep a reflection of ourselves. In the Middle Ages, it mirrored our religious guilt. Wake up in the middle of the night to pray, purify your soul in candlelight. In war zones, it was a luxury, a roll of the dice, an opportunity to live or die, depending on how far you were willing to go. In ancient temples, it was the spiritual hotline, where gods murmured in code. In the modern world, we sleep out our contradictions. We dread idleness, but long for unconsciousness. We purchase pricey beds, then sabotage them with glowing rectangles. We long for peace, but we make our wars in our dreams, and yet, however much we may try to shorten it, skip it, control it, or monetize it, sleep persists. Because whatever we invent, there is still something about closing your eyes and surrendering into it that can't be digitized. Sleep is the final thing we do vulnerably. When you're asleep, you're helpless, your identity dissolves, your ego shuts up, your memories shuffle, Your body resets. Your brain begins whispering tales it would never utter in the light of day. Even today, an age of machine learning, quantum computing, and space tourism, we are unable to reproduce it. We cannot fake it. We can't upgrade it without upgrading our own self. Why? Sleep is where the human is. In our dreams, we encounter lost loved ones. In sleep, we confront fears without embarrassment. In sleep, we find clarity no spreadsheet can explain. It's our reset button, our unconscious rebellion, our invisible religion, and it is the one thing that all human beings in all times and all places share. Pharaohs and peasants, samurai and stoners, kings in golden chambers and monks in quiet caves. We sleep. Some do it surrounded by an entourage of guards. Some do it under open skies. Some do it with salt spread around the bed and covered mirrors. Some take to bunkers with humming machines. Others do it on the sidewalk or under the moonlight, forgotten by systems, but not by sleep. And when it does get weird, freaking weird, there's a comfort in that too. That if a society is bizarre, broken, brilliant, burdened, it still has to sleep. And in those hours of the day when the world says, stop measuring, stop judging, stop scrolling, stop selling, that's when you start to get into the wild stuff, the real stories, the deep stuff, the old magic, the strange peace, the soul work. So maybe it's not about hacking sleep. Maybe it's about recollecting why we're still drawn to it, why we cherish and shield it, and sometimes fear it. For in the end, sleep is the one frontier that always will be wild. However otherwise evolved we may ever be, we keep coming back to it the way children do at a campfire. For warmth, safety, mystery, and maybe even a few monsters from the dark. And maybe that's the point.